Hello, today I want to talk about system design interviews and cover it for both candidates and the interviewers and just cover some general topics. So we're gonna have introduction, some requirements, numerical estimates, data model, core algorithm, high-level components, trade-offs analysis, some deep dive, and like just looking at it end to end. So let's start with just introduction about like what this is. These interviews are just usually for like open-ended question, testing candidates' ability to work in a structured environment, like make it more structured, come up with some solution, and make sure it like solves some of the problems discussed. The interview typically lasts 45 minutes or 1 hour and 10 minutes with interest and post-interview talk, leaving not too much time for actual core part in either way. Some common questions would probably be like some product system, or like web app, like Instagram or Airbnb, some generic piece of infrastructure like cache or rate limiter, or something like involving embedded components, like let's say fast track system for like metering if you are going towards like express lane and like charging you accordingly. Um, so there are often completely like not wrong or right answers, and it's like more important to just have a like ability to clarify and analyze trade-offs, and it's more important than having some precise like quote correct solution. For more senior candidates, it's also like important to drive a conversation and like go from step to step and mention what you're going to talk about and just let the interviewer like guide you a little bit. Sometimes if you like if say you're spending too much time on something or whatnot. Let's talk about requirements. That's what you should start with. So remember two magic terms, functional requirements and non-functional requirements. Functional requirements, it can be like just basically what the system does, like for example, posting and viewing photos on Instagram. And non-functional requirements is about like how it does it and some like properties, like availability, consistency, durability. As a candidate, I outline those and clarify with the interviewer if like you picked the good ones and if something is missing. Make sure to like clarify like what's needed, what's not really needed. Like for example, if you design a cache, that for example availability and performance will be pretty important, but for example durability would be not as important. And these requirements are pretty important to clarify because they would guide a lot of decisions later. And it's an interviewer, if you see candidate just jump into the solution, just like guide them back to like setting requirements. One thing, don't spend too much time on it, like set 10 minutes like or about that as like a limit and just move on. Just make sure you have some like more like specific solution and which you're ready to work on. Let's do numerical estimates. Like usually it's a good thing to do like shortly after the requirements. Ask clarifying questions to see if there is one of some items or like multiple of those, or like scale, for example, number of users 1 million or versus like 1 billion, things like that. They don't have to like guess, just like ask how many, or like uh, basically it would like clarify what we are designing for and influence some decisions very drastically. Um, so estimate common things like queries per second, some memory usage, number of shards or replicas needed, and then like exact numbers not really nearly as important. You can just come up with some like quote reasonable estimates, but again, like you may not be up to date with the modern hardware, so don't worry too much about it. Make sure to like try to drive some key decisions. For example, is like everything fits in memory onto like one box or on disk into like one box, or do we need to shard? We may still want to have some replication just for more durability, but like for example, deciding whether we need to do sharding or not do sharding is like very important. An interviewer like gives some numbers if the candidate goes too deeply into the solution. Just make sure to outline that and maybe like pick the right moment and say, hey, actually like we are designing for this many like users or something. Data model and core algorithm, usually you can would have some kind of like data and it will be structured in some way, would have some relationships with each other, and you can use some typical ways to store it, like a database, write a head log, or maybe just like a file if it's like some very simple one. Again, all depends on requirements. Um, And there would be sometimes some algorithm with some data structures, or where just like you need to compute what you need to compute, and that involves a little bit of extra hoops. So you need to be able to explain how your system would like uh, handle key pieces of information. And note that as interviewer, that modern databases are very performant. Various considerations of SQL and SQL may be a bit outdated, so don't be like surprised if candidate like noobs you and like says, oh, actually, for example, like SQL is actually very performant or something. Sometimes if like scale is really huge, maybe those would matter, but like a lot of it depends on specific hardware, specific setup, which like can vary greatly, and you would probably not have those exact numbers during the interview. So focus on like presenting a good data model and analyzing trade-offs, and then in the end, like as an interviewer, you can just tell that hey, we are picking like, for example, NoSQL just because we don't need like ACID properties. So, and that's good enough. But make sure candidates list those like with pros and cons. High-level components, it depends on type of application. Most design interviews pick some kind of web app, but it's actually not like always the case. Like there may be some like desktop app, and maybe you would need to focus on like some UI design, where to put buttons, etc. So you need to understand the context of the company you're interviewing for, and also understand like what the context of the problem. Web app is most typical, so I'll focus on that. Typically, you want to include something like load balancer, API gateway for like TLS termination, authentication, rate limiting, etc. Some stateless services to do compute, and some kind of like database or databases. Some problems may also benefit from like content delivery network or some queues like Kafka, but don't just blindly stick them. It's like probably like actually lose you points if you like just say, oh, hey, we're gonna use queue because of we have more reliability. But then like for example, the application you design is cache, and be like, is it really a good choice? It's like it's good if candidates can talk about like some queue, but that's very important to analyze trade-offs and see like requirements and if it fits or not. So like candidate analyzes that and rejects the idea, then it's actually pretty good. It shows ability to think and do some like considerations. Trade-off analysis here, we talked about it a little bit already. It's a very important part, and as I mentioned, you cannot like make perfect decisions in short interview for a system that's like in the real world is built by many people for many years. So it's like more important to like think about some pros and cons and like think of obvious things that's not gonna work out. Some general advice would be just be knowledgeable about various technologies, like for example type of databases, and when deciding to add some component, know its pros and cons. Sometimes it may be not even worth adding, like the queue we just discussed. And reference requirements. That's that's why we need them. So deep dive is good to have to just show some extra knowledge that you maybe like worked more with certain like systems, like maybe you work with some like Redis, for example, and the system involves Redis, so then you can like show extra knowledge about like some APIs or like performance metrics or like some like just talk about development of this, and maybe like talk about more like meta picture about hey, maybe like right now the one choice is good, but like given that how ecosystem is developing, that maybe some other choices may be better, something like that. Show some technical knowledge, understanding of the system, and just pick something you're interested in. And as an interviewer, also encourage the candidate to pick some topic, but don't force any specific one on them. Like there are so many like possible things to discuss during the interview, so like candidate may not be like knowledgeable in what you are knowledgeable in, and it's like totally normal. You cannot like learn everything. Um, so yeah, just be knowledgeable about various kinds of systems and aim at learning about tons of different things, like how they work, how they're designed, and that would go a long way to like help you out. And then in the end, you need to have like something that works, like that solves the problem. You shouldn't get stuck on like individual components and like maybe discuss only a part of them in some depth. You'd rather just like discuss some like end-to-end solution first on maybe more like high level, and then deep dive. And then you may want to analyze some things like, for example, what are the weaknesses of the system, what are like the bottlenecks, how to make it fault tolerant, and make sure you get like something semi-completed instead of just like randomly getting distracted by some specific topic, even if it's like interesting, if it's great. You can also like consider some scenarios, both in interviewer interviewee, like something malicious or an intentional DDoS attack, and how to like handle that, how to make system resilient. Um, it shouldn't be expected also to cover all of the topics we just discussed. Like, I don't know, maybe would not be enough time for deep dive, especially if interview is like 45 minutes. That's okay, like 70% of topics covered should be like considered great. Again, like as an interviewee, don't like sweat it if you like miss something. It's not like a checklist. It's so like interview itself is open-ended, just as a problem discussed. And then yeah, there is no perfect solution. So like just focus on like thinking, and like maybe as an interviewer you want to get candidate out of the comfort zone and see how they think. Maybe ask some follow-ups if they like ace some parts, and then see how they perform. All right, that's gonna be it for today for this video. Thanks for watching.